Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining this installment of ML Events hosted by the B&P Meetup of RTP. I'm Candace Eisberg of Medical Leverage, and I would like to gladly introduce Scott May, the Meetup organizer and Sales Account Executive Southeast at Elemental Machines.
Thank you very much, Candace, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Very happy to be working with Medical Leverage and the team for this great presentation today. I think there's going to be a little something for everybody regardless of role. So we're in for, I think, just a great webinar discussion today. Just a quick note about me. Candace mentioned my title, my company, Elemental Machines, provides lab monitoring solutions to the biopharma and biotech spaces and beyond. I am also the organizer, and based here in RTP, by the way, and I am the organizer for the Biotech and Pharma RTP group. So if you are interested, you can find us on LinkedIn, but also through the Meetup application as well. We'd love to have you as a member. Thanks, Candace.
Great. Well, this is Dave, Oury's voice, and I'll get started. And Scott, thank you again on behalf of everybody at Medical Leverage for this opportunity. We very much appreciate it, and we look forward to our discussion today. The purpose for our meeting today then is to give you a little bit of an overview of Medical Leverage, but also to talk about what's gone on over the past 130 days or so that's been so unique, that's caused such a change in the marketplace. That's changed the way that we've communicated with our healthcare providers and our customers, and then to talk a little bit about at least some of the findings that Medical Leverage has driven into with insights from their customers, talk a little bit about some of the solutions that we brought to bear and some of the results. But we're looking for engagement as well, and there'll be opportunities throughout our discussion today to poll you and get some chat feedback from you, and then at the end to get some live conversation going. So I think most folks on the call are familiar with medical communications, but Medical Leverage is a medical communications company, and the market segment that we work in is very unique and specific to healthcare, but communications are central to all businesses. And the manner in which we used to communicate and educate on behalf of our clients prior to COVID-19 was immediately affected the end of February, the beginning of March, and it became unprecedented. And so believing that things are going to go back to the way they were when a vaccine is discovered and implemented is one strategy to consider. The other strategy to consider is that this has been a transformational phase, and that we're not going back to whatever was before, that it's going to be something new. And the session this morning then is meant to share some of our insights and our learnings and gather some from you as well. Jeff, if you can move on to the next slide, please. So today's agenda will give you a very brief overview of Medical Leverage. We'll talk about this seismic market shift that we've all experienced. We'll talk about the new normal, and then we'll end and open it up for our discussion. Jeff, if you want to move on. The two voices that you're going to hear today include the one you're hearing right now, Dave Oury, and then in a few minutes, I'll ask Jeff Morrison, who is our Vice President of Strategic Solutions, to take over a part of the presentation and review a case study with you and some other very salient information. All right, Jeff. So Medical Leverage is a North Carolina business that was established a little over 19 years ago. All of its employees are North Carolina residents. We work with national and international pharmaceutical, biotech, medical device, medical diagnostic companies to help them educate and communicate with their customers that use their products. We work in many different therapeutic areas. Some of them are mentioned here. And we work to try and, again, to work with customers and clients of the manufacturers to help implement educational gaps, or to cover educational gaps that are occurring in the marketplace. All right, Jeff. So again, we're a medical communications company, and we know that we work with healthcare providers, patients, caregivers, and others that are taking the manufacturer's products on a day-to-day basis. Jeff? Our clients that we call upon fall into 4 primary areas of the company: marketing, medical, training and development, and value and access. And one of our most important objectives is to identify educational and communication gaps within those customers and address them with either content or programs that will help achieve measurable results and hopefully also align with the key objectives from our clients. The customers then fall into several different, the customers of our clients then fall into several different categories: healthcare providers, patients and caregivers, payers, scientific organizations, and researchers. And we know that every product, device, and or test is tied to a patient, and a patient is tied to a family with friends and a certain expectation for daily life. And we take that to heart. Jeff? The types of services that Medical Leverage offers then fall into several different categories. And I'll just identify a few of them for you. So they range from advisory boards, where we're trying to gather insights from key customers, to content development in the form of slide decks, manuscripts, abstracts, posters, to training modules, videos, and workshops, and also then to tactical programs like speaker programs that are executed virtually these days in many different forums. Jeff? We've built a structure over our 19 years that's really, it's intended to repeat success. We're a big believer in people, process, and platforms so that we can have that repeated success. We've done it with experienced people that come from industry that have had similar positions for which the clients that we call upon. We've been buyers of the services, so we know what good looks like. And we've tried to build it around core values that mean something to our clients. Values like we take a client mindset, try and always be strategic in our thought process with a positive attitude and accountable in every way. The old adage of you can have a very good strategy, but execute poorly and get a bad result, versus you can have an average strategy, but execute flawlessly and get a very good result. We're always trying to get both parts of that equation right, but we certainly want to always be in the executing flawlessly as best we can. Jeff? So our first poll then that we'd like to ask you to go ahead and interact with us. We'll give you a couple of minutes to answer these questions. This is meant to give us a little idea of who's on the call with us today. We'll give you another couple of seconds here and then we'll carry on. Candace, Jeff, are we showing the results?
We can publish them.
That'd be great. Let's go ahead and do that. Fantastic. Well, thank you for doing that for us. All right, so then let's move on to what occurred in mid-February, beginning of March. A seismic market shift obviously occurred, and a word became very prevalent in almost every paragraph that we spoke from that point forward, and that word was unprecedented. So what makes that word unprecedented so appropriate is the totality of its reach. And Jeff, I'll ask you to move forward to the next slide. So when you consider the four main pillars of macro environment, those being political, social, economic, and technological, all four of those pillars were impacted almost immediately by this pandemic virus. Hard to plan for that. And so with that in mind, we started to gather client, customer, and market insights back in late February, early March, and we built our insights with these four pillars in mind because they were going to affect our path forward, obviously. Jeff, you can move forward. During a 3-week period of time in that late February, March period of time, we met with nearly 100 healthcare providers, and we tried to distill their insights down to four main categories. Those being for the clients and their sales representatives, limited in-person access and limited virtual platforms and relationships in place. And for the customers that the clients call on and the patients that those customers represent, it was financial instability and limited in-person access. Jeff, you can move on. Let's talk about the limited in-person access. Many of you know this firsthand. So company representatives were out of the territory and in many cases are still out of the territory. They tried to open up in certain states and then had to close right back down. HCPs are unable to see non-essential patients. Prior virtual interactions really were not established. So sales representatives had to consider Zoom and GoToMeeting and Teams as a way in which to communicate with their healthcare providers. And there weren't necessarily policies and procedures and SOPs in place. So our manufacturing clients, they weren't, from a compliance standpoint, they may not have had emails that were all approved, and offices didn't have SOPs on when a doctor would be, an HCP would be available virtually to meet with a sales representative. So that all needed to get established very quickly. Jeff, if you want to move forward, please. Then there were limited virtual platforms. So as many of you know, telemedicine was not something that was mainstream. So physicians had to find which telemedicine platform they wanted to use and then train their staff and themselves. They also had to select a virtual platform like Zoom or GoToMeeting in order to communicate if needed with sales representatives and others. And they needed to train their staff. All right, Jeff. And then the instability, the financial instability. So with low patient volume, surgeries and other services, how long could a physician's office maintain with the overhead at the overhead level that they were at? With reimbursement uncertainty, especially around telemedicine. Were they eligible for PPP money, grant, or loans? And with what stipulations? And that caused obviously some staffing indecisions. Do we go part-time? Do we furlough? How do we handle this uncertainty? All right, Jeff. And then what we heard from the physician offices back to the client was, if you have patient support programs, we would be interested in talking with sales representatives, because many of our patients have been furloughed or laid off. Patient education materials in a digital format were absolutely needed. Virtual product information and peer-to-peer discussions became very important, because physician HCP offices wanted to know if somebody else was experiencing the same thing and doing something different with a better outcome. They wanted to learn those best practices. And then if you had an in-service that you could bring to bear for their staff, obviously in those periods of time when patients being seen in the office was very slow, there was an opportunity to do that. All right, Jeff. So at this point, I'm going to ask Jeff to jump in and take over. And I'd just like to say thank you on behalf of myself and others at Medical Leverage for this opportunity. And Jeff, I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you, Dave. All right, so Dave's been covering a good bit of the macro side of this, what has happened, and some of the insights that we've gathered along the way. So it kind of now it's time to transition a little bit to now what? Where do we go? Is this really a new world? And if you joined early enough to see some of the slides that were rotating at the beginning, there were some facts that you saw, and it's the reason we believe there's likely a new normal. I don't think we're ever going back to the way it was. Not saying that we're going to stay here, but there's definitely not going to be a complete reversal back, and that's on a number of really informed thoughts. And one of the ones that Dave mentioned was telemedicine, for example. You just look at the massive economic shift. 20% of all healthcare spend is expected to go and remain in telemedicine, which is causing a huge shift of care into the virtual platform, or on the iPhones that we all share, or Androids that we all share. So it's really changed the space of healthcare a lot. Zoom's a good example. Massive growth in that platform as well. 300 million daily users in the height of the kind of pandemic time frame around April, versus normally 10 million users. So it's really had a seismic push, which has been really pretty interesting to kind of experience this. And now we know this is the must way of working. I've told some people that it used to be that I would be on 3 to 5 video calls a month, maybe. Now I'm on probably 5 to 7 a day. And that's a video call. So it's really changed the way I know I work personally, the way my customers work personally, and the way they're working with their customers. And there's a demand for excellence. They want it to work well. It's really kind of a blessing that this happened now versus maybe 10 or 15 years ago. I'm talking to you on an HD camera, which was all of $30, but the video quality is absolutely amazing that's available to us now for really just a little bit of money. And the internet has kept up with this. Most people's technical providers are able to do this. So it's really been interesting on just the platforms alone and how they've withstood this. But then it also has to translate into what we're sharing, right? The communication style and the content, it's a little bit different. It's easier to be a bit more didactic in person. It's very hard to do it in an interactive virtual forum. Does the content we have, does it translate to the digital or virtual world well? Some people were ready for that, some were not. And as we spend a lot of time as a service provider helping people with their content, and shifting to virtual is a very big part of that. And then thinking about the platform they're on. Are they on a laptop? Are they on a phone? How does the content respond and adapt to that? And then, as Dave mentioned earlier, SOPs. SOPs are being built all across right now the paradigm. And do we have the right things in the processes to kind of protect and sustain and really hopefully allow us to all thrive in this virtual world? And lastly, I will tell you that there's been a dramatic increase in technical ability. I was on a call recently where we were pulling together authors for a clinical trial manuscript readout. And so they're pulling this information together. And what was most fascinating is we would have probably normally taken 15 to 20 minutes to get everybody up and running on a virtual platform. And within mere minutes, we had the bulk of the audience there. And it was really a range of physicians, backgrounds, ages, et cetera. So it was really fascinating to see that in, really the difference between a year ago and now, how much more proficient really most everybody is on these platforms. So it is a new world. And it kind of leans into the content. I want to get in there a little bit. And as I mentioned earlier, content strategy is very important, and that is my primary function at Medical Leverage, and really hoping and helping customers with their content to make sure it is spot on. And the nice thing is most people have a lot of great content sitting in-house right now. So to adapt it to virtual isn't necessarily as big a lift as it may feel like sometimes. You can really adapt that content. You're really kind of asking yourself the key questions. Are the goals and objectives still the same? What content do I have? Kind of doing a content audit. What is available to me, and what is going to translate well to this audience? What kinds of things need a little bit more updating? And then, as I just mentioned, audience. Do we have the right things for the right people? And you really got to think about, again, kind of attention span. Virtual attention span is much shorter. Email science tells us that you have 3 seconds to get somebody's attention with an email, and that is so true. And so this gives people an opportunity to really think about, what do I have? How do I grab people's attention fast and communicate in a very succinct way? So we're seeing much more streamlined, efficient, content, if you will. And then, you got to think about all the formats that we're going to deploy on Zoom and GoToMeeting, email, web. There's so many different things that are happening out there. Apps, a lot of app creation going on right now. So there's just a tremendous amount of content that needs kind of adapted. And then that translates into the user experience. The CEO of Zoom has been interviewed a number of times recently, and there's been one consistent thing that he has said time and time again, and that is, beyond all else, we want the user experience to be consistent from start to finish. So when they went up to 300 million users or down to 10 million users on a daily basis, they need that experience with Zoom to feel easy and simple and clean and consistent. And I use the ESCAPE acronym to help me think about user experience. And I do that because I hit the escape key when I want to get away from something on a computer. If something's popping up or causing me problems, I start hitting the escape key. And I think users do too when the user experience isn't easy and simple and clean. And so that's something I use to kind of help be a check for me. And then we got to think about the content again. I know I talk a lot about content because it's near and dear to my heart, but thinking about how do you get it in more of a digestible, virtual, interactive format, and then thinking about the hours of times that people experience content. Off-peak, promotion is really a big thing right now. Maybe sending that email on a Saturday makes a lot more sense than sending it on a Monday, because somebody's more likely to engage with it. We're hearing from physicians that they're engaging with content really all throughout the day and evening. And so it may be that you want to think about off-peak engagement, not all the time, but certainly there's a place for it, because people are consuming content at different times of the day, which makes downloadable resources and different types of things you can make available via apps or whatnot really quite powerful. And then, I mentioned earlier about the use of video. Video interaction has been really interesting. I know for me personally, I would tell you that I probably feel a little more connected to many of my clients now, because I'm seeing them more often through the use of video calls. And I really like that. There's actually a lot of sales teams across the country who've literally shipped out studio equipment, so green screens, and they're almost teaching them to interact much like a weatherman interacts in a news program. And so it's almost become studio produced video. Now there's also the need out there to produce studio quality video as well for some of the resources. So the user experience is really taking a front seat here, which is important. And then one of the last things I want to leave you with in terms of the new world and how we're going to really kind of break through, because that's really all comes down to, is there's a tremendous amount of noise. One of the factoids you saw maybe in the beginning was that there's been a 200% increase in email volume alone. And so there's a tremendous amount of noise out there. But people are engaging with it. So the open rates are more, than they've ever been. And, the click rates are still good. Unsubscribe rates are really low right now. But personalization is where it kind of turns the corner. So I'm gonna share with you a few stats that I find interesting. I don't know if you all are the kind of people like I am that I'll sign up for the birthday emails, if you will. So, maybe Chick-fil-A or Moe's or various places, if you give them your birthday, they'll send you usually something on your birthday in email. Well, do you know that birthday emails generate 342% more revenue than a standard promotional email? And they trace it back because it's personalized to you. Personalized calls to action create a 202% better than default call to action. So they're generating that better interaction. They generate personalized communications, generate a median ROI of 122%. And I thought this was interesting. Email subject lines that have a personalization in it will generate 50% higher open rates. So one of the things I want to leave you with is, if you want to cut through that noise, make the effort to personalize. It is harder. It is a little bit more intense. To make sure that you have the names right, because if you miss a personalization, they'll feel that for sure. But it really does create a uniqueness and an individualness to the communication that makes the customer feel kind of that customer first experience. It increases engagement, it increases attention span. So it's something, we all should consider. Some examples of these that we've found ourselves doing are like speaker or representative video invitations. So the opportunity to record a short video and ask somebody to attend something like this, a webinar or a speaker program or something to that effect, really in a more intimate feel. Small group programming. Think about trying to get people into smaller groups versus larger groups. And then utilizing things that can help endure the resource, but then it has a personalization. So, things like apps where we can surface content based on somebody's behavior or interests. And so that's another thing to think about. So I would encourage you to really think about, how can I personalize the communications going to your customers? And so I believe we have a poll that's going to pop up. Let's see if we get that up here. Is that right, Candace? There we go. All right, so you're going to see a poll around platforms and interactions, and would love your feedback here, and we'll publish it here in just a minute. So really would like to hear what you have to say here. So I'll stop talking and give you a minute to answer. All right, just a couple more seconds, and we'll close the poll, and we'll publish it as well. All right, Candace, you want to close and publish? Let's see what we say. First one, are your platforms helping you thrive? Love to hear that 80% feel that, and I would echo that. I think the platforms have really risen to the occasion. Now, there's definitely some that could be better, and helping identify the right platform for the right purpose is really something we try to help our clients do. Is the content translating in the virtual world? This one gets you can see the results. It's maybe not as great as it could be, but it's working for now. So it sounds like there's some opportunities for some. How would you rate your user experience? Again, some feel it's a positive differentiator. Some maybe not so good. And then are you able to effectively personalize your communication? So a good 60% are doing it right now. And it can be a tricky thing. You've got to make sure that you've got the right platforms in place. Dave talked about that. It's something we're really particular about and want to make sure that we can use those in a way that does allow personalization. So one of the things I would encourage you all to consider is we do a readiness assessment, and it's up here now. I'm just going to talk through it. There's no obligation to do this now, but I want you to think through a couple of things. Did your 2020 plans change? Probably so, right? And a lot of people are underway with 2021 planning right now. And there's some things that we like to walk through with customers when we help them kind of walk through their planning process. And so, it really focuses on a couple of key areas right now. Their customers. Do they have the right insights with their customers? Do they have the right content? And can it translate as they make a shift? Programs. Are the programs in place? And then training. looks like Candace has published a poll, so I'll give you a second to take that. And while you're taking that, I want to say that anybody on here, one of the things we like to offer is a free hour of consultation to kind of help maybe think through some of these questions. And so there'll be a way to engage with that later on here in a little bit, but encourage you to take advantage of that. We'd love the opportunity to speak with you. And Candace, once that's fairly well complete, feel free to close it and publish it. As you're looking at these questions, if you don't feel like you know the answers to them, or you don't have the right insights, again, we'd love the opportunity to help you maybe think through a way to get those insights, or even offer to help you do those insights. Just one more second. Candace is telling me one more second on the poll, so a few people are just about done answering. All right. So you can see the results they just published, so you'll get to see those. So it looks like a lot of you are in the throes of the planning process starting in September. Do you know where your customers are consuming information? Seeing a lot of no's in these buckets, and certainly want to again offer to help you all with that and find some of those opportunities. So I want to share with you a case study, something we've been working through. And so I will tell you that we have blinded this, so you can't tell who the customer is. But I want to share this situation with you. And so what we have here is kind of the situation pre-COVID, if you will. So we had a product that we're helping with great clinical utility. Unfortunately, it has fairly low market share, and that's because of the dosing that surrounds the product. Maybe a little confusing for some of the physicians to either start or convert a patient. And it takes a little bit of education. There's this pretty significant educational gap there in the dosing. And so, our goal is to increase that competence. And one of the things that we decided as the plan to go forward, a strategy, was we needed the education, and one of the tactics that fell out of that was live speaker programs, KOL-led programs, and predominantly utilizing representative recruitment. And so that was what we were well underway with when this COVID thing broke out. So we had to kind of adapt pretty quickly. And so we went through a series of processes, and you'll see a couple of products that we offer. So we used our ML Blueprint product, which is an advisory board product, to really get in detail with the KOL insights to make sure we knew what the customer was doing, where they were going, how we were going to be able to access them, get the right insights, and then shifting that over into that content audit that I was talking about earlier. So we needed to take a moment, prioritize that content. And one of the things we learned pretty quickly is the live event could have a little bit longer content, but in a virtual setting, which is where we really needed to go next, was to shift to a virtual type engagement. It had to be consolidated, chapterized, or chunked, and adapted to that virtual setting. And then from there, we wanted to think about the platform. Do we have the right platform to engage with? And so the Speaker Bureau platform, we had the good opportunity to launch a mobile app. So that's going to allow us the ability to do push-pull notifications, basically surface materials, and re-invite targets to additional programming. Because the programming is getting chunked into smaller pieces, it makes more sense to try to get multiple engagements with the customers, which honestly will probably have a much better impact as a result. And so through that good fortune of being able to launch the mobile app through our Speaker Bureau platform, it kind of enhanced our Speaker Bureau platform in a way that was going to be really timely given the COVID situation. And then lastly, the representative the representative outbound communications needed to be augmented. Asking them to do the sole level of recruitment, given the situation and moving virtual, wasn't really feasible at this point. So we have a product called ML Engage that allows us to do a personalized outreach. And so we are able to then help recruitment via this, kind of this content platform basically. And so we created a communication plan and augmented that outbound communication. And so again, we needed to train the speakers to do this virtually. So it was a shift to virtual. So that meant bringing the speakers that were presenting this information previously in a live format and making sure they understood the kind of the new smaller form content and the goals of those programs. And so we created the additional program types to optimize that user experience. And again, try to get people maybe engaged more than once and then launch that. And then lastly, we needed the representative to be on board. We needed them to advocate for this. And so through our ML Thrive training process, we trained to mobilize the reps to really do this in a virtual way. So additional virtual communications to the HCPs to support the recruitment of this educational program. And so that's, you know, kind of one way how we walked through a particular case as a way to move from a very live situation to a virtual situation. So it was it's been fun to watch it. It's ongoing, so we're still kind of experiencing each and every aspect of it, but so far so good. So let me summarize with this. It's COVID-19, obviously the word that Dave used and the world keeps using is unprecedented. There's no doubt about it. It has been an unprecedented event, and it likely is creating a very new normal. The impacts have really had, you know, a sweeping, you know, impact across really all aspects of the macro environment, as Dave touched on. And there is that new normal. Virtual is not going away. In fact, it's just only going to get, you know, more and more in use, we believe. And, you know, thankfully the platforms exist, and, you know, the content strategy can be put into place, and the personalization can be put into place. And so really it may be a really great opportunity to step forward and thrive. You know, this may have been a nice push, if you will. And we believe Medical Leverage is uniquely qualified to help. You know, this is something, thankfully, we have for the last 18 to 24 months really been, you know, in kind of heavy R&D, making sure that our platforms were right, which allowed us, again, to, you know, kind of perfectly time that app launch, you know, to have outbound communication programs that are really focused on personalization. You know, things like that, thankfully, were in place. And we do feel like we're uniquely qualified to help people reach their customers, you know, given the new environment. And so, if you are interested in having us help look, you know, you want to take a chance with us on the 1 hour of consultation. There's 3 ways you can schedule that. So if you've got a QR reader on your phone, which most do, you can scan that first one. The second one is you can visit our website. We have a banner there. You can click on the strategic planning session. We will offer you a complimentary strategic planning session. Or you can register via B&P's post-event email. And so all those 3 are available to you. We can bring this back up again a little later, but all those are available to you. And so with that, we want to start asking some questions, or get you asking some questions. So we're here to answer some questions or have a conversation. So this is where we can kind of all flip on the video and the audio and have a little bit of a conversation. And if you prefer, feel free to put it into the chat box. I just opened that up on my screen, so I can see that. Dave can see that. But we'd love to hear what questions you might have for us.
And hey guys, this is Scott. I've actually got a couple of questions that were sent in via the meetup, I think, from folks who weren't able to attend. Is it okay if I fire away with a couple of those to start?
Please.
All right, cool. So the first one is, if representatives, medical sales representatives, I'm presuming, are not in the healthcare providers' offices, how will physicians receive promotional product education?
Jeff, you want me to take that, or you?
I apologize. The video cut out, so I didn't hear the back half of the question. I apologize.
Oh, sure, no problem. Let me ask again. If representatives are not in the healthcare providers' offices, how will physicians receive promotional product education?
It's a great question. If you don't mind, Dave, I'll take a run at it and, you know, clean up what I miss. But, you know, the thing I've heard from the physician audience and our clients who are experiencing this, and, you know, they've had multiple insight gathering moments, as have we. they are seeking a number of things right now. The physician still needs the education around the product itself, and they are very much still interested in patient resources. So they are seeking it, and they find themselves going to websites. They find themselves wanting to engage with representatives in a virtual format. That has been overwhelmingly positive to hear, is that they still want to engage with the virtual representative, but they also are looking for outbound emails or access to platforms, like the Speaker Bureau app that we have put into place. That's an enduring moment. It's not something for it's an enduring platform. Actually, it's not meant to be just a one-time use on your one speaker program. It's meant to be something that gives you the ability to surface information again through those push-pull notifications over time. And so really, I don't think it's changed in the sense that they still want the rep, but they are definitely more prone and more apt at going and getting the information elsewhere. And, it's an opportunity to kind of serve it to them.
Not much to add there, Jeff. That's a very comprehensive response. I think it's just incumbent upon the medical communications company to work with the client to find, where we are going to create the right content for the HCP to go and find, and where we're going to place that content for the HCP to go and find.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? And Jeff, I'm wondering, we may have some questions for them as well.
Absolutely. Scott, if there were no other questions that got mailed in, I'll offer a few of these. I would love to hear, first of all, if what we've been sharing with you is consistent, and feel free to chat it in or even just say, but are the findings we've found with the the insights, the in-person access and the platforms, some of those things, are those consistent with what you're experiencing?
Please don't be shy. We'd love to hear your voice.
Absolutely.
We may be getting tired of hearing each other's at this point. So another voice would always be good.
That's right.
All right, Scott, do you have any other questions that came in?
Yeah, you just took the thought right out of my head. So there was one other question here that I think that we had was this one is a little bit broad, but even with a vaccine, and I'm guessing as we look at the medical world here, even with a vaccine, will things go back to the way they were pre-COVID outbreak?
Yeah, I don't think it will. I'll pull it up on the screen and I'll give you a couple reasons why I don't think it will. It's information like this, where you see $250 billion in care shifting to telehealth. What used to be $3 billion. That is an order of magnitude that is off the charts. And so it's things like that really tell us that there's probably not a going back to the 3 billion land, if that makes sense. I think there's a tremendous shift, just like this. They're specific here. So 20% of emergency room visits could be avoided. So what's interesting is what's happened is all aspects of healthcare see the value in something like telemedicine, and then there's things like this, virtual clinical trials. We've seen a lot of COVID research going on recently. And what they've learned is that there's tremendous time savings, there's real-time data, and there's a reduction in the risk to the patient. So, virtual clinical trials is something that's going to come storming into the market soon, if it hasn't already. And so, for those reasons, no, I don't actually think that there's going to be a big shift all the way back. I think there is a new normal. It may go back some, but I don't think it's going to go back.
Yeah, if you don't mind just adding a bit of a personal experience here, one thing that I thought about was about a month or two, into this pandemic here. My primary care provider, she's a great physician, but she's very old school. No electronic medical records or anything of that sort. Still has the paper charts, but she never misses anything. But she had never done any type of virtual virtual health appointments at all. But even she started doing that when all this started happening. So even she started doing telehealth, during that time. And although it might have been easier for people like psychiatrists and maybe some other providers, I think that for people who really were not even looking towards doing this at all, they started to adapt pretty quickly. So yeah, I think I agree. But anyway, I just wanted to add a little bit of a personal note in there, if that's okay.
No, that's great. And I've just got a message from Candace that said you all were unable to unmute yourselves, so that may have been part of the silence. So if you do want to submit a question, feel free to do it now, because you are officially able to unmute yourself. Sorry about the restriction there. And give it a second to see if anybody has a question they want to add now that they actually have the ability to do so. And Scott, I've had a similar experience. I had a similar experience with a couple of physicians that I spoke to. They absolutely no interest in telemedicine pre-COVID, and now they really, really enjoy doing telemedicine. And there's a recent study that came out from the AMA, and they showed, I think it was a 57% increase in favorability towards telemedicine from physician audience. And the physician audience, by and large, was not real into it at all. I mean, the overall thought of it was almost detestable to the physician audience as a whole when surveyed. And now the majority of the physician audience views it as, kind of the favorable thing to do. So it's been a pretty dramatic increase.
Yeah, no, I can see that, and as someone who used to sell electronic medical records, I understand. I mean, physicians are just they want to see the patient. They want that firsthand, diagnosis live and in color, and I completely understand that. But and maybe it's not the best for every patient, obviously, but I think that where and when it can be done, I think it's a benefit to both the provider and the patient, certainly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, if there's no other questions, what I'll do is transition to kind of what's next. So we've really enjoyed this opportunity. Thank you again, Scott, and the entire group. We really appreciate the opportunity to be here. But if we were able to do this again with you all, I would ask, what kinds of things would you want to hear in the future? And I'd encourage you to, I guess, chat this in, or if Candace may have created a poll, I'm not positive, but, feel free to chat it in. But basically what we'd love to know is, what kinds of things would you like to hear of in the future? Would you like to hear, skill building type things, or would you like to hear from an industry executive or expert, something like that? So there's, a wide range, kind of open forum here. What kinds of things would you like to have on a future webinar?
Sure. Yeah, and I think that either way we'll have the ability to reach out, and we'd love to hear your feedback. And thank you again, Medical Leverage team, for coming in, for providing all this great content. I certainly, on behalf of the entire meetup group, we certainly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
All right.
Look at this. We can give everybody 10 minutes back in their day. How about that?
There
How
you
about
go.
that?
Hey, Scott, again, on behalf of everyone at Medical Leverage, thank you very much for the opportunity. Hope you found the content worthwhile and the experience engaging enough. As Jeff alluded to, we are interested in your feedback, and if we do get the opportunity to do this again, if there's a different forum that you would like, so a roundtable or other folks to be a part of it, so whether that's an executive, as Jeff alluded to, and then topics, that might be of interest. So any and all of those things are open, and we'll take all of that input for sure. But thanks, and have a great rest of the afternoon and a good rest of the week.
All right, great. Thank you, guys. Thanks everybody for attending.
Thank you all.
Thank you.